Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that everyone has enjoyed the conference so far. I've had a chance to go through today's meeting posts that have been going up there, along with going through the Twitter site, and I appreciate all the comments. We're going to keep going through those as we start off today's question and answer session. To begin, what I'd like to do is have the panel introduce themselves to you, and we'll start with Mrs. Wetzel at the end there.
Hi, I'm Lori Wetzel, and I am the K-8 Media Specialist here for Fraser Schools.
And I'm Charlene Barla, English teacher at Fraser High.
I'm Luke Woods. I'm a science teacher and the director of online learning.
I am Chris Young. I am the director of educational technology and information systems.
Hi, I'm Carrie Wozniak, assistant superintendent.
I'm Bob from Account Temps.
He's a real character.
I'm Jessica Carrier. I am the principal at the middle school.
I'm Brianna Panici. I'm a senior here at Fraser High School.
I'm Ron Del Villano, treasurer of the school board.
I'm Steve Dembo from Discovery Education.
And I'm Regina Cable, high school media specialist and also Fraser Education Association representative.
Thank you very much. There we go. Today is going to be pretty free-flowing. If you have a general question or a specific question, if you'd raise your hand, I'll come around to you. What I'd like to do is start off by asking a few questions, and then we'll move towards the audience to answer your questions. So, Charlene, if I could start with you. You were one of the initial online hybrid teachers. Can you talk a little bit about the differences from last year, which was your first time doing it, to this year, if you don't mind?
Well, there's definitely a learning curve. When we started the hybrid program, it was started as a pilot program, and I was one of the 4 teachers that were involved in it. I started with an English 11 class. For me, it was a class that I had already had face-to-face, and second semester we moved them to completely online. This year versus last year, essentially just a lot of small things. You learn as we go. We're realizing it's a work in progress. Probably one of the biggest things is just realizing that it's a learning curve for everybody, the parents, the students, and the teachers, and that we needed to be patient as we went through it.
Great, thank you. Luke, do you have anything you'd like to add to that? This is your second year also in it?
I'm just, agreeing with everything that she just said. And, one of the things I told my students going into it with the pilot was, this is a pilot. We're working on this together. We're going to hit some roadblocks. We're going to figure it out as we go. So I'll be patient with you if you'll be patient with me. And that was, one of the agreements that my students and I had going into the pilot.
Fantastic, thank you. Is there a question from the audience at this point? Oh, fantastic.
I just had a question for one of the teachers. How much of the content are you creating, or how much of the content is directed elsewhere by maybe a third-party provider?
I think it depends on the content area. So I'll answer for science first. The content that I use for astronomy is the same as the content that we use in the face-to-face class, but I have gone out and found some additional resources, some simulations and labs that the kids do online that we didn't initially use with the face-to-face kids. That might look different in English.
It's pretty close. We, for one thing, we try really close to stay with the curriculum. We still take the common assessments as the face-to-face classes, but pretty much I created all of the curriculum and all of the instruction that goes online. None of it was bought. Everything that is put out there are either video resources or other internet resources that I found online. It is entirely from scratch.
Okay, my question is for Brianna. How many online courses have you taken in the last 2 years here? And then your answer depends on my second question.
Okay. I've taken 2 this year. This is my first year with online classes. I've taken 2 so far.
Okay, so could you just spend a few minutes giving kind of a student's perspective on the whole situation? How it works from your perspective, the time management issues, going to the media center, not going to the media center, leaving school, all those things, if you could, please.
Well, one of my classes is an English class, and I like having that online because we do all of our tests we do in class, but we also, like all our essays and stuff, we do at home, and we'll email them to the teacher, which I like a lot because it gives, I feel like I have more time and I can focus better on what I'm writing to write a better paper. And for things like articles that we have to read, the teacher either will post something on there or she'll have us find our own article and she'll approve it or disapprove it, whether it relates to what we're doing or not. And as for like independent reading books, we find those on our own, and she'll also approve or disapprove those. So everything focuses on our topic of study, but it also lets you have a little freedom with what you're doing.
Brianna, has there been any particular challenges for you that you didn't anticipate when you first signed up for the course?
Well, I'm not very good with technology, so I thought that would be a big problem for me. But after you get the hang of it, it's not too hard. Really, all it is working with Blackboard and setting up an email account so that you can communicate. And Blackboard, it seems like there's a lot to do on there, but there's not. With my English class, we just have a journal tab and a discussion board. The journal tab, we usually post more personal things like papers and stuff. And then the discussion tab is for us to interact with other students, which I like because it helps get feedback from other people than just the teacher, like peer editing almost. So that's convenient.
Just a quick question for the teachers. How much or what role do textbooks play in your classes?
In English, we do not use textbooks, but we do still have anchor texts. So the kids do actually check out a hard copy at this time of a novel that we're reading. So we do not use an anthology or anchor text, but we do use novels.
What's a textbook?
Okay, thanks.
Luke, my question's for you and your role. What does your day look like? Do you have part of your day as a director of the online learning and part of your day in the classroom?
Yeah, the way our schedule is set up, we're on the block, and so every teacher teaches 5 classes. I only teach 4 classes, and then I get that 5th block to spend time doing coordinating for the online program.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Another question for Brianna. What's the feeling of your fellow students? Is it similar to yours? Do you hear them talking about the difference between the online classes and the regular face-to-face? Is it positive, negative?
It's mixed. I hear, a lot of my friends that I talk to about it, they like it just because they get to sleep in or they get to go home early. But there are kids who get frustrated easily and they don't like having to do things on their own. They like that face-to-face. And I am a visual learner. I like to see things being done first, so I thought this was going to be a challenge for me. But I also like being able to do things on my own time, and it takes a lot of stress off, opposed to having to do stuff right on the spot.
Brianna, did you have to learn how to take an online class?
No. Well, within the first 2 weeks, we learn the basics. We get our logins, and we make our Blackboard accounts, and our teacher walks us through everything we have to do. And it takes a few days to get used to it and, learn what you have to do and what not to do. But after a while, it just becomes a habit. It's like showing up for a regular class, bringing what you need to bring. It's pretty easy.
Okay.
Mr. Del Villano, I have a question for you. In one of our earlier sessions, we had a number of questions related to the community and how they viewed the hybrid learning. Mm-hmm. As a member of our school board, I'm sure you've had an opportunity to talk with community members about this. Could you share with us either your personal thoughts or some of those conversations you've had with our community about that?
That's a good question. It came up in our last breakout session. We were in the science session, and one of the people in the session asked that question. I think a couple of things came out in that discussion. First of all, the hybrid learning and the hybrid curriculum is being designed and developed by our teachers. So it's really, the intent is to try to use as much homegrown information internally and grow it from there. It's not like, I'll use the example of Chicago math. We're bringing in a new system. We're all going to go to this new system. It's different than what you had before, and it's forced on the community. It's an option to the student. We still have the traditional class along with the hybrid classes. We stepped into it, 4 classes the first year, and grown it from there. That's been a big help. That was all happening in the background. 2 years ago, we started the strategic plan, and Dr. Dave approached the board about a strategic plan. Most of us are in business or other industries than education, and that's what we were looking for. How do we plan the next 3 years, 5 years? And so we brought community members in to help with the strategic plan, and sprinkled through the strategic plan, whether it was the technology piece, the communication piece, the finance piece, was hybrid learning. We want to go down that path, and we set milestones for 3 years on how to get there. So not everybody in the community knew the strategic plan, but they were involved in it. It's posted on the website, and there's really been no pushback. I think having the option to take the hybrid or not take the hybrid, we're growing it pretty fast now, but we still haven't had any real resistance. We have questions from the community. But I think the way it was homegrown by the teachers, incorporated in the strategic plan, and then come together with at least the students have options. It's not we're cutting off this curriculum and moving towards something different right now. That we didn't do that, and I think that helped. So.
Thank you.
I have a question for the teachers. With doing the hybrid classes and then the full-blown online courses, do you find that what you've planned and the resources you've found and the flexibility that it gives you with the students, do you find that that has bled over into your face-to-face classes? Has it changed how you approach your face-to-face classes in any way?
I definitely think it could. There are definitely things that I like about delivering through a computer. There are some things that definitely keep the kids more engaged in the assessments, at least in English language arts. They're very authentic because they're original writing all the time from the kids. And I could definitely see where if, given the resources within the school, where if we had more computer labs or more technology in the building, I would probably transition my face-to-face classroom so that we're using a lot more technology as well. I can definitely see integrating some of the ideas from the online course into a face-to-face class.
And I would agree with that. Some of the labs that I found for the online class, I liked them so much that I started booking the lab for the traditional class and having them do the same labs, just here with me in the computer lab.
Do you provide computers and connectivity for students that don't have access to those?
Carrie, do you mind talking a little bit about that and what our plan is? And Chris, you can follow up with that too.
At this point, we don't provide computers for the students to take home. We do have a tech bond where we have received a pretty substantial chunk of money from our community, and we've held off on spending that money. And I know in our past sessions we talked a lot about the importance of defining what that learning environment looks like. But I do see us in the next 12 to 16 months moving to almost a one-to-one environment, at least 3 through 6th grade in our district. And I do think that's going to change the way in which a lot of our delivery is happening, because as you pointed out, once you start to build those hybrid courses, and there are so many interactive learning modules that they're building into their classes, I really see that becoming a natural fit into the face-to-face classroom. So you're going to definitely see that bleeding over into I think the regular or more traditional curriculum. And I'm going to let Chris talk a little bit about the pilot we're going to be starting in a month.
Yep, we have a pilot starting at the high school. We want to find out what device is best. We've spent, I think, 8 months talking about the learning environment. We haven't talked devices in our tech committee, which is kind of interesting because usually you start out talking about technology, and we haven't. We talked about the learning environment. We decided that we wanted to look at the option of an iPad at the high school. So we have a 2-week pilot that's coming up in May that's going to happen with one class, and it's going to start again with another class right after that. So about 4 weeks we'll have with 2 different sets of, I think, about 60 kids, and they're going to go through their actual curriculum that they're building for this to really see what can this device do. Is this the right device, or is another device something? And we'll find out what those results are and go from there. So.
I'd like to add to that. I think there's a couple of things that is helping the situation. We have a cloud drive where data is up on a drive, and students and teachers can share files. But maybe more important, another big cost to the student potentially is not just the $100 laptop, but it's the software. So we have shared applications, PowerPoint, tools that they can use as long as they just log into the system here at school. They have tools, the expensive Word, Excel, PowerPoint, that they can use a shared application so they don't have to buy those tools. That's huge. That's the bigger cost of computing these days. So we're tackling one thing at a time, I think.
And to add on to that, that was free. So that's a big deal to us. Just throwing that in there.
This is for Regina. It sounds like you didn't lose any teachers doing this, and I'm sure you wanted to protect that. Did you have to come up with any agreements with the district as far as evaluation systems or any special agreements to put this into work?
We have such a strong and positive relationship between the board, the administration, and the Fraser Education Association that the conversations flowed very easily as long as the contract language that applies to all of us as teachers was honored. There was not an issue at all, and it could easily transition to the hybrid classes. So as an example, we have teachers that are teaching some of the hybrid classes that are over 30 in the class, and those teachers are compensated just like a face-to-face teacher is compensated. And there's also another option that if the teacher takes on an extra section, if they're in a face-to-face setting, they're paid, in this building, they're paid 1/7 of their salary. If they're in a hybrid situation and they take on the extra class, they're paid 1/7 as well. So the contract language seems to apply whether it's in a hybrid or in a face-to-face environment. We have a contract that is valid until 2014, and because the hybrid classes came up in the January of 11, that contract was in place, and a letter of agreement is in the process of being drafted. So if there's any other issues that will come up, they will be a part of that agreement, that letter of agreement, and we don't anticipate any issues because we have such a strong and positive relationship with our administration.
And I would say, I would agree with that 100%, Regina. I think a big part of that initial conversation, that kickoff, was to go first to the EA leadership and to say, listen, this is what's in the works, this is what's going on. Because you really have to take on those ghosts or gremlins, the thoughts that people are going to have, that your only goal is to outsource us and start eliminating jobs and save money. And if that is your goal, be honest about it and just put it out there. But if it isn't your goal, then talk about how you're going to maintain jobs and the structure of it within the confines of the existing contract. And I think that with that, you build a lot of trust right off the bat. And then allow the teachers to drive it. And that was the power of this, and the magic of it is the teachers really owned the implementation. The administration, as Mike mentioned earlier, our job was to support and do as much as we could with resources and time so that they could build it. And then their accountability with each other is much more than what we could ever put into place. So as far as evaluating it, there really hasn't been a lot of issues with somebody logging in to take a look at what it's like and how things are going, because there's never been a gotcha mindset with it. We want to encourage that risk-taking, and so there's no way you can have that if they know you're just looking for a way to zing them. And so I think that's where that trust has really come in, and we've had relationships and understandings all the way through it. And when new things come up, because they will, you have to communicate. You call each other and say, I have no idea what to do with this one. What do you think? How do you want to handle it? Is that on schedule, off? I mean, it's all that stuff can get involved then. But there's no quick schemes or anything with it.
Luke, if you could follow up just for a second. You and I had conversations. I know you talked with other staff members about class size and talking about what we committed to moving forward with this. Do you mind speaking on that for a minute?
Sure. Like Regina already said, our hybrid courses follow the same contract language as everything else. So going forward, it's not, ideally, we would have liked everything capped at 25 like everybody else would, but, that's obviously not our reality in Michigan right now, and so the agreement that we came to very early on was all the hybrid courses will follow the same contract language as traditional courses, and, it was just unusually easy to get things started because we had that conversation right up front. We sat down in a room, it was the 4 teachers that were going to be working on the pilot. We met with our union president, Dr. Richards met with us, and we all said, here's what we want, here's what we're willing to give up, but these are things that we are insisting we stick to. And, as long as what we as the teachers said, this is what we want, as long as it was meeting the contract requirements, the union was good with it, as long as it wasn't going to cost a ton of money, administration was okay with it, and administration and the union have both kind of taken a hands-off approach to this and kind of let us as the teachers run with it and go the direction that we feel it needs to go. And, Dr. Lons is fond of saying that even when we do run into a problem, we don't come to him with a problem. We come to him and tell him about the problem, and then we say, and this is what we've already talked about, we just want administrative approval that this is okay. And so, for us, because we have that good relationship between the union and administration, we haven't had many issues with that.
Thank you.
I actually have a question, one for student and teachers and then for administrators as well, if that's okay. For the student and teachers, I know some districts use programs like E2020 for credit recovery purposes only, and a lot of the curriculum and the reading online is kept at a fairly low level because readers don't have the support right there to read more challenging texts. Do you find yourselves as teachers erring on the side of providing articles and texts that are a little bit easier to read for students or to comprehend because you're not face-to-face and able to help them through difficult texts? And as a student, do you find the online content doesn't challenge you as much as articles or books that you might tackle in a 11th or 12th grade English class or any other class, really, for that matter, because teachers are putting forth content that everybody's going to be able to get through online?
Charlene, can you start off answering that, and then Brianna will give you a chance to think about your answer.
Yeah, face-to-face versus hybrid online, I have not adjusted the rigor. The articles are still demanding articles that are meant to be just slightly above grade level so that they improve.
Brianna, have you seen a difference?
There's really no difference. The articles, for my English class, the articles we get are just as hard, and that's what the discussion board is for. That's usually when we have an article, we have to answer CCR questions, which are, what does the text say, and what does it mean? Why does it matter? And
what does CCR stand for?
Close and critical reading.
There you go.
But yeah, that's what, they're just as hard. It's what am I trying to say? The contact comes in on the discussion board. Not even the teacher can discuss back and forth. Mostly it's the students, and for my class, we're required to respond to 2 other students just so we're getting that back and forth, but even the teacher can respond to things, which helps too. So.
Thank you. Then my question for administrators or anybody really that wants to answer has to do kind of with assessing the program and how well you're doing and how you're measuring success. Besides growing the participation of students taking these classes, are you tracking the particular students taking virtual and online classes and comparing them with students that are not, or with state assessments, things like that?
Sure. Mike?
Yeah, as we talked at the opening, we looked at final grades as one way of we're measuring student achievement. Now that we have a full set of data at the end of this year, we're going to be able to tie the hybrid students, their final grades, and then look at their ACT scores and see how that correlates, again, with the brick and mortar to see if there's a significant difference between the two. So that's stage 2. We couldn't really do that with the pilot part of it. Okay, question over here.
This is for Regina and Dr. Richards and maybe you, Luke. Regina, you alluded to a letter of agreement, and Luke, you alluded to an agreement. If you're living by the contract, does that letter of agreement address the online learning, or is it a totally separate issue, the LOA?
I believe that because we're only a year, just a little over a year into this, that there may be some issues that have come up that the letter of agreement may spell out that may not be covered by what we were talking about before as far as class size and the teacher's schedule and different issues. So that discussion is in the process of taking place?
I'll be honest, I haven't seen it. It hasn't been that big of a deal to where it's like, listen, we got to really sit down and talk about this. The teachers and the EA are getting the concerns once they understand them a little bit deeper, but it actually hasn't made it to my desk yet to where we're really sitting down and saying, okay, what's in, what's out, and what the concerns are. I'll tell you, the biggest benefit of all this is the professional standard that they've set as a teaching profession is fantastic. And as I said earlier, they do more to self-police than we could ever do. So I'm sure that when we get to the letter of agreement, it's just because we're trying to get an older contract to fit a new style. And so I'm confident in that.
And just to follow up, it probably could be a simple statement about hybrid, which is not in the contract, isn't in anybody's contract. And just to backpedal just a little bit, when we began the PLC process, that was not language that was in our contract,
Right.
and we sat down and drafted language that made sure that that was addressed in the contract. So this letter of agreement would just maybe define
Right.
what we mean by online learning and online teaching.
Steve, I'm going to ask you a question of kind of forecasting to the future. Knowing you get to travel around a lot and see a lot of schools and hear what's going on, what do you see as the next evolution in the educational system, whether it's tied to student achievement, pedagogy, methodology? Fielder's choice on that one.
If I really knew, I'd probably be making lots more money than I am now. I'll be honest. I mean, I think there's a lot of speculation about what the next learning environment is going to wind up looking like. Honestly, I don't know. I think hybrid is one of the more exciting things that I've seen. I teach online myself, and I noticed that while we make it as intimate as we can, there is a element of disconnect that doesn't occur when you don't have those chances to make those face-to-face bonds. So I really do think it's a very powerful practice. I think we're just kind of barely scratching the surface with it. Really, the evolution of that to me is some of the things that we see coming out of like Stanford and MIT and so on in terms of creating scalable, very large-scale classrooms that are scalable to the local level, where you still have that face-to-face component, you still have that intimate personal relationship with the people that you're working with, but at the same time you're working in unison with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people around the world. So I think it's just a matter of scale, but I think we're on the path right now.
Great, thank you. Nicole, you have a question from today's meeting site?
Okay, posted on today's meet. If you don't actually see students in writing, reading, thinking process, how do you know where the breakdown is if there's a problem?
Luke, do you want to start with that one to talk about how are you, in essence, helping keep track of where your students are and supporting them?
Yep. One of the things that we do that we have in place is, we've talked a little bit in our session, and I'm assuming the others have, that we give our hybrid students open campus privilege, and during that time, as long as they are maintaining a 70% in the course, they don't have to be present that day if it's an online day. The kids who fall below that 70%, then we take that privilege away from them. They're required to be present, meet with me, and then I can go through their work, go through their grades, sit down with them, and have a one-on-one conference and discuss, here's where you're falling short, here's what you need to do to get your grade back up, and if you do those things, then you don't have to come in on the next online day. You'll earn your privilege back, and it's just a simple, it's not a perfect system, but it does allow us to keep track of the kids who are struggling and help them figure out what they need to do to be more successful.
Charlene, do you have anything to add to that?
Just in the class that I ran, the kids that were dropping below C-, it was actually pretty easy. There were zeros across the board. And as far as, so they clearly just weren't doing their work. And as far as assessing their progress, I would still continue to do it in the traditional way, just like in the classroom. We still do formative assessments. And again, in the English language arts, it's easy to have them do original writing all of the time, and you can see their progress as you go. So I think in response to the actual question, it hasn't changed from the face-to-face. That the formative assessments and other assessment types are still in place.
Great, thank you.
Lori, I'd like to know what is being done, if anything, in the middle school to prepare the students for high school and the possibility of online learning.
Well, those people that were able to attend the middle school session saw some examples of what we are doing. I think one of the biggest pieces is in the computer literacy classes where we're implementing the 21 things for students. And that in and of itself is exposing the students to all of the Web 2.0 tools that they will need to be successful within the online classes at the high school level, so that they're not tied to PowerPoint or they're not tied to a specific tool that is application-based. They can be using more original tools, having more creativity in their projects and choices. And the high school teachers are going to find that they don't have to teach those things. So if they ask the students to outline an article or use some CCR strategy, that they can use a tool like BubbleUs to go ahead and create that because they know the tool because of what they've experienced at the middle school level. So I think the 21 Things has been huge, and that's constantly evolving. The other piece is that though we don't have a lot of teachers using Blackboard, all of our teachers have an online presence. And so they recognize the fact that the classroom, the school day doesn't end at 2:45. They know they can always go to their teacher's website, and a lot of our teachers have Weebly's. And Weebly's, while they're free and don't have quite as much functionality as Blackboard, Weebly's have the blog function, so kids are being asked to blog. Kids are being asked to post online. We do have some classes that are using Blackboard, and they are getting that experience. So I think we're in the beginning stages, but that transition between the elementary up to the high school is definitely in process, and we have nowhere to go but to involve more teachers in that process.
Is anyone creating their own video content, like the Flipped Classroom or the Khan Academy, for their classes?
Brianna, you want to answer that?
Sure. Not for my 2 online classes that I have. There hasn't been much video content, but for even one of my math classes, I know I have AP Calculus, and if you miss one class, you miss a whole lesson, and it's really hard to get caught up. And my teacher, he puts the lesson online. He'll videotape the lesson as he does it on his computer, and it goes through every step just like you're sitting there in class. And he even does, it's like kind of like Skype, only you don't see each other, but it's a blackboard, and he shows you how to do the steps, and you can talk back to each other. So it's not like video, but there has been video contact, and it's a lot easier if you miss or if you're not able to be in class, so it's convenient.
And my daughter does have a class, Mr. Ray, he's taped his entire course, section by section, day by day, over a summer, 2 summers ago, and he's on my kitchen table talking half the time, and relearning the lesson or just strengthening a point and then doing the problems. It's very helpful. A lot of self-initiative.
Jessica, as a follow-up to what Lori was talking about, seeing the changes that have happened this year at the middle school, where do you see the middle school moving in the next couple of years when it comes to technology, hybrid learning, using Web 2.0 tools? What's some of the vision that your building has for that?
Well, I think we're just very much hoping for one-to-one to come our way, and I think the one-to-one is going to be huge.
I would agree with Lori on that. I think the one-to-one is huge. We just had 10 of our teachers that went to McCall were part of our technology conference. We brought Apple in. They were able to see how the tool would support their curriculum. So that was very exciting for them. When they walked out, they were excited. I posted some blog questions on our staff blog saying, what does it mean to teach a middle school learner? What does a middle school learning environment look like? And got some really great feedback and dialogue going between the staff. So I think we're on our way there as far as getting more people involved, like what you saw. If you went to the middle school, you saw Mary Schweiger's Blackboard course. We realized that we're that link from the middle school to from the elementary to the high school, and it's critical that we're preparing our students for the environment that they have over here.
Great. Thank you. Nicole, is there another question from the website?
Yes, another question from today's meet. Were additional online resources or tools purchased to supplement the online content? If yes, what tools or resources did you invest in?
Chris, can we direct that to you to start with? And if you could do me a favor and speak up just a little bit.
Sure. Live.edu is something that's free. It's just like Google Docs for Education. It's something that the district decided to implement. It includes Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote on the web so that students don't have to own it at home. They can log in from home and also get to these applications. Also, it includes email, and it also includes an instant messenger along with audio and video. So the kids can talk to their teachers at night, they can talk to other students and collaborate. So there are a lot of different tools there, and that was all free. So we moved all of our students and staff to that system during our pilot with the 4 teachers. Piloted that system, then moved everyone over last summer. So that's one of the tools that we did implement along with our Blackboard to augment that program.
Carrie, as you look as the instructional superintendent for the district, how does this look to you moving forward as far as additional resources that we may have to purchase beyond just that device?
I always think of things as in a K-12 perspective, and I think we have to be very conscientious of what we need in our lower elementary, in our in the upper L, middle school and high school, because you want to have a continuum. And the middle school is a great example of trying to bridge the elementary and our high school together, and they're trying to do a lot of things with project-based learning, and they're going to need different kinds of, I think, devices than perhaps our high school might need, and what we're looking at right now to do with hybrid learning. And I think that's why that conversation that we've had the past 8 months has been so crucial, because we haven't talked about, okay, every kid needs an iPad or every child needs a laptop. We talked about what do we expect a first grader to look like? What does that first grade learning environment look like? And what does the middle school environment look like? So my recommendation to schools that are moving in this direction is to have those conversations with your staff members, to really think about what do you want that learning environment to look like, because that's going to then drive what those purchases are. I think if we had elementary teachers up here, they'd probably be talking about different devices that they might want purchased for their classroom versus what perhaps our middle school might need. So in my position, I think it's really important that you keep that K-12 perspective in mind, and you don't think of this one-size-fits-all approach to what you're going to purchase or what you're going to buy.
Great. Thank you. Luke and Charlene, in looking towards next year, if you had either all the money or time in the world, what would be the one thing that you would look to either change or have, buy, to help make our hybrid classes function better next year?
That's broad, isn't it? Go ahead, you can answer first.
One thing that would be helpful that we're going to be able to do soon is some sort of device in the kids' hands. For what we're doing, we've got approximately 5 computer labs in the building, and there are days where you consider getting in a fist fight with someone over who's going to get to be in the lab. And so being able to alleviate that and have the technology and the computers and the availability of those resources for the students, that would be the biggest thing in my mind, is just making sure everybody has access whenever they need it.
Yeah, I would agree. In the past few years, I have held back on moving forward with technology because I know I need to share. So yes, it would be nice if we had at least close to one-on-one computers for the kids.
Brianna, I have a question for you. Why'd you take a hybrid course?
Well, I'll be honest. I liked the idea of getting to stay home and do things on my own time.
Thank you for being honest. It's a great quality, Brianna. That's a good answer.
But it's not even just being able to stay home. It's nice to have the freedom to do things when you want to. Like, I know I'm an athlete. I have things to do after school, and I have a job. So it's not always convenient to do things when, like, right after school or when you're supposed to do them. So it's nice to be able to do my homework later at night before I go to bed, or even during school. If I don't feel like leaving, I'll just go in the computer lab. So that's pretty nice. And also, it's preparing me for college. I'm a senior, and I'm leaving in about a month. So I like that it's getting me ready for college, because I know a lot of stuff in college is going to be online. And like I said, I'm not good with technology, so I need as much practice as I can get.
Fantastic, thanks. Lori, in your position, you have an opportunity to see a lot of the K-8 technology that's being used, and obviously being on the tech committee, you see the whole K-12 opportunities. Where do you see hybrid fitting in, if at all, to the middle school concept? And then that's part one. Part two would then be, do you see that it could be transferred down at all to the elementary concept?
Well, I'll kind of answer it in reverse, I guess. It already is happening at the elementary in small pockets. We have 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade teachers that are using Blackboard with their students. So it is already happening in pieces. Not to be negative, but I think one of the major pieces that's holding us back is that at the elementary, not all of our elementary kids have email addresses. And I think if all of our elementary kids had email addresses, and I know we're moving in that direction, and I'm talking 2nd grade, 3rd grade. As a parent, to be honest, I'd rather have my child have a Fraser email address that's monitored than some Yahoo or Google account that isn't, so that our students can be creating glogs. And we do have 2nd graders creating glogs. So those kinds of things are happening. It isn't going to be the case, of course, with elementary or middle school that, you know, they're coming to school late or leaving school early or whatever the case may be. But to comment on the middle school portion of the question, I guess I'm looking at things like when we have students come to us that are 7th and 8th graders, and these 21 things are almost kind of a joke for them because they tool around on the computer all the time, and learning those tools is nothing, and it is simple for them. Wendy and the other computer lit teachers, they are making additional activities available. They are able to do the gaming sites and things, and they're actually creating their own games. But what I see as being powerful is the idea of the fact that we've got a middle school and a high school that are right next to each other. We basically share a campus. So if we happen to be teaching an online web development class, could we have one of our 7th or 8th graders taking one of those online web development classes or web page development classes, even though they're housed at the middle school, taking it at the high school? I guess I'm seeing the lines blur between middle school and high school a little bit in that respect, and I think the hybrid and online learning allows that.
Great, thank you. We're going to go to a question from Nicole here in a second, but for the panel, if you could consider Web 2.0 tools and think of one that you'd like to either talk about or recommend. In a minute, we're going to call on some of you for that opinion. Nicole, you have a question from the website.
Are relationships with students more difficult to cultivate online? Is it possible to really know your students without seeing them much?
Charlene, if we could have you answer that first, and then Brianna, I'm going to ask you to follow up on that, please.
The way I set up my class, teaching in the block, we see the kids every other day, which means every other week. They either meet on Tuesday and Thursday or the following week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I set up my schedule so that if it was a Monday and it was a normal day that that block would meet, then we met face-to-face. And I felt that that was necessary to keep it together, to keep the human element there, to remind them that I am human. Sometimes they will send you emails where it seems that they forget that. And also, you know, to keep me connected with them as well. So I did like the hybrid approach. I like seeing them once in a while. I mean, maybe over time that will fade away as, you know, we embrace new technologies and come up with more creative ways to keep personal with the kids. But for now, I like the hybrid approach where we got to see face-to-face occasionally.
Thanks. Brianna?
Just saying what she said, like we're still seeing each other in class, so it's not completely blind. You don't have any contact with a teacher at all, but I've noticed that the relationship is the same with the teacher I have in class every day and the teacher I have once or twice a month. I haven't really noticed a difference in the relationship, so it's not too bad.
Great, thank you.
All right, Brianna, I have another one for you. What do you think are the most important qualities that a teacher needs to provide a student in order to be successful at teaching an online hybrid course to you, the student?
Well, for my online classes, I think it's important that the teacher gives feedback so that we know if we're doing something wrong, that we need to fix it. Like for one of my English class, we had to do a works cited page, and almost everybody did it wrong. And we came in, the next time we came into class, our teacher told us, well, you guys didn't do that right, we better go over that. And we went over it, and now everyone knows how to do it. She gave us a copy of it so that we know how to do it and what we did wrong. And I think that's important. I think you need at least some contact so you know what you're doing wrong, what you are doing right, and how to make it better in the future. So I think feedback is definitely important and necessary for success.
Thank you. Now to the Web 2.0 tool that you would recommend, appreciate, etc. Lori, what Web 2.0 tool do you think is pretty effective?
I think one of them that has helped me stay organized, which is key. When we have so many devices, you've got your phone, you've got your tablet, you've got your laptop, you've got your teacher computer, you've got all these devices you're moving between, and you have all these sites that you want to keep track of. Digo is one of my favorites, and it's one that our 8th graders are using a ton because it is part of the 21 things. I don't know that our teachers are using it as much as our students, to be honest. All of you know that in any Web 2.0 tool, you're creating different accounts on all these different sites. Digo not only allows me to keep track of the sites and where they're located, they allow me to tag them with keywords, and then if I make them private, I can actually put my usernames and passwords right into them because there's absolutely no way I can remember all those usernames and passwords. And it doesn't matter what device I'm on, I can access those sites no matter where I'm at. So that's probably one of my favorites.
Great, thank you. Dr. Richards, what would be one Web 2.0 tool that you would recommend?
I have no idea.
I thought he was going in order.
Honestly, I think that, we talked about this in our meeting earlier with Steve, with the curve. I think that the tools are changing so fast. Lori does a Tech Tuesday tip for us, and I'm just waiting for that to come out because that's my chance to try to stay current. I spent 15 years as a technology director, in the past 7 as a building level and a superintendent. And in that 7 years, it doesn't take very long until you're not on top of what's going on in the tools and all of that. So honestly, I always defer to Lori or the teachers and say, when you're at McCall, find out what's going to provide kids with real-time information and feedback that we can put answers easily in front of kids and teachers to try to create those digital dashboards. So I don't have one that I say, boy, this is one we have to have. I really rely on these guys.
Great. Regina, what
Just being honest,
be a Web 2.0 tool that you'd recommend?
I think I'm right there with Dr. Dave, that I have seen students embracing so many of these Web 2.0 tools, and I think it gets down to their personal preference and what they feel comfortable with. And as they struggle with certain things that teachers have given them to work with, I'm right there with them and assisting them when they come into the media center. One of the things that's been huge that I don't know if we'd actually call it a Web 2.0 tool, but I'm going to go back to what Chris had said about having that email access and having the SkyDrive and being able to collaborate and use the SkyDrive to be able to share documents and interact on the same level, because there are students that we still have in this building and in this district that go home and they don't have that connection to the internet. They have to wait until they can get to someone's house where they can use the internet to work on assignments and things, and to have that commonality with the SkyDrive and be able to access their documents and still complete their assignments has been huge for some of our kids.
Great. Thank you. Nicole, I think you have a question from the side.
Are all hybrid classes expected to use the same LMS to maintain consistency, student safety, and security?
Luke, I'm going to ask you to start off with this question with the consistency part, and then Chris, if you can follow up with the safety and security part.
In terms of the consistency from class to class, yes. We require everyone who's teaching hybrid to use Blackboard, and again, that's just the platform that was freely available to us through the ISD. And then to further that, we all have on our Blackboard sites a tab called FHS Online Learning, and I build that tab for every single course so that the teachers don't have to do it. They just add me to their site as a course builder. I go in, create the tab, put all the documents in there, and that creates consistency so that the kids know, whether they're taking my astronomy class or Charlene's English class, that they're getting the same basic principles and that we're all following the same set of rules and using the same set of documents to communicate with them, with their parents, and to make sure we're all on the same page.
With regards to safety and security, Blackboard is a login site. So anything that the students are posting, you have to have a login to get into it. So that's covered with Blackboard. What's interesting is that our district has really taken a stance of allowing the teachers to use the tool that's best for them. So in the high school, the hybrid classes are done on Blackboard, and it is very consistent. At the middle school and elementary levels, they've really opened it up and said, you've got Blackboard as a tool, but also look at the other tools that are out there. So a lot of our teachers are using Weebly and Wikis and all different types of mediums, and they may not have a secure way to log in, but that's okay because the content they're posting isn't something that needs to be secure. So you've got a lot of blogging going on with EduBlogs and a lot of different sites there. So it's a big spectrum that we've got going, but the good piece is that we're really trying to focus on making sure that the students and the teachers are comfortable with what they're using versus forcing them into a medium that they may not be as comfortable with and may not embrace.
Thank you. I think we have another question, Nicole.
What do you say to a teacher who says, why learn this technology if it's going to change in a year or two?
Steve, could you take a shot at that one?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of times we get fixated on a specific tool that we really like in general, but the tools come and go and they get supplanted all the time. It's the ideas behind the tool that we really need to focus on, not specifically what that tool is, but what it allows us to do. Because that's the piece that isn't going to shift too much. You know, blogs are great, but really when you boil it all down, all there is a way to communicate in written form and allow other people to interact with it. So if blogging goes away and something else replaces it, that's fine, as long as we're still focusing on global communication and inviting other people to join in that discussion and finding ways to make that happen. So the tools themselves are almost irrelevant, the specific ones.
Thank you. Carrie and Jess, I know that you're involved in the PD process extensively for the district. When you hear a question like, why learn this technology, how do we answer that question as a district when it relates to our PD plan?
I think, again, it comes down to what's the purpose of that tool? What is it we want to do within our learning environment? So I really do, as Mr. Dembo pointed out, see the tools as a part of a way to define what that learning environment is. And I always kind of look at it as, what is it that I need to do? What's the problem that I need to solve? And then I go to the tools as that answer. I just put on the little today's meet. When we did this summit, we had to have a way for people to register. So we found a tool, and I put that on their jot form to solve that problem. So for me, it becomes a reason to then learn that tool. And I really think that's important as you begin to plan your PD. Chris and I have worked very hard at making sure whatever we do design PD, we survey our staff and we find out what's their need, what are things that they need to do better in their classroom, and then we want to provide that PD for our teachers based upon that need. And I think that's very important to keep in mind. Don't just come out with I think these are 5 great Web 2.0 tools and they're going to help solve this problem. I think asking the teachers what is it that they need to do in their classroom, then how can we support that?
I think the cost of failing with new tools is very inexpensive, and in the past I think we used to analyze the application. Is this the right tool for the school district? People are using tools. If they don't work, they move on to the next tool. That's been talked about. I think Steve mentioned that today. I think we all do that at home. We all do that at work, right? You find a good website, you find a good tool, you use it, doesn't really work, you jump to the next one. But then the PLCs coming together and talking about what's working, what's not working, will end up converging on the right tool for different subjects, different applications. But the cost of failure is very cheap these days, so everybody's trying what seems to make sense.
Great. Thank you. Question over there.
This question is for Brianna, actually. We started a lot of our hybrid classes here at Fraser in 11th and 12th grade classes, and you said that you just took them this year, right? Do you think that as a student, as a 9th grader, you would have been prepared to take a class like the ones you're in now? And if not, what could we as teachers be doing to get kids prepared to take a hybrid class earlier and be successful?
I don't know that it's so much that the teachers could prepare the students, only because I know myself a little bit, but my friends too, having an online class it makes it easy to procrastinate. And especially going into high school, I know I see underclassmen, their study habits are getting worse and worse, and that's just another reason for them to procrastinate. So I don't know that it's something the teacher could help, but I mean, I'm glad I took them this year, even though, like I said, it's given me a reason to procrastinate, but I don't think it's something younger kids should have as much. I think it's a privilege that older kids should be able to take advantage of. But I don't know about underclassmen. I think they should be able to get used to a face-to-face learning environment before they get the privilege of learning online.
To follow up on that, Charlene, can you talk a little bit about your 9th grade English proposal that you had for next year with the 9th grade online course?
Sure. I had proposed that in order to transition the students into online learning, that we run a 9th grade English 9 class as an online class, but they wouldn't have off-campus privileges. So probably much like many schools run E2020, the kids would actually come in, sit at the computers. I would be in the room, or whoever is teaching it would be in the room to field questions via instant messaging, be there for when they're having struggles with technology and maybe to remind them just to stay on task, but so that they get used to the instruction being delivered through the computer and not having that direct face-to-face contact with the teacher when they have problems, so that they learn to ask others, collaborate with others, and work through it. That might be a good transitioning way to start them into online learning.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Nicole, I think you have a question, and then we can take one more from the audience, or we'll start wrapping up at that point.
How are teachers differentiating the curriculum when using the online instruction by ability, process, or interest?
Luke, can you speak to that a little bit, if you're able to differentiate through the hybrid process?
It's not that much different from what you do in a regular class. You identify who your struggling students are, build an extra support for them, maybe schedule a time for them to come in and meet with you, and give them that extra support they need. And then, obviously we have face-to-face days where we have all the kids in, and, just like in a traditional class, you can identify who needs more help, who you can turn loose and let them just run with it, and it's really not all that different from a traditional class.
Charlene, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I would tend to agree that, it seems like it's this big, strange thing where the kids are there, but we're over here. But if you work to stay connected, encourage the kids. If you get stuck, email me. I have the school's server, the Exchange server on my cell phone. So wherever I'm at, I get texts not texts from the kids, but emails from the kids. And I've let them know that I'm available because they are nighttime workers. I've let them know that I'm available usually until about 9:30 at night. After that, if they're working on it at 11, I'm in bed and don't even bother. You won't get a response. But, it's made our day a little bit different where they do email me throughout the day. And you just encourage them to use different lines of communication. And to be honest with you, some of the kids who are a little bit more timid in approaching a teacher face-to-face or asking questions in a whole group setting, that communication that's direct to the teacher but in written electronic form, for some of them suits them better. So you just open the channels to other types of communication than what you would typically use in the face-to-face.
Great, thank you. Is there a final burning question from the audience before we wrap up? Okay, to the panel, for the good of the group, we'll start with Regina, and you can pass or you can say if you have any parting thoughts that you would like to give to our audience.
This has been a journey that we've been on for a little over a year now, and I can just see it getting better, that more teachers are becoming excited about what the teachers have been doing. And as we've gone to conferences and interacted with our peers, we have found this excitement is starting to build throughout the state, and it's the future, I would say. This hybrid learning is here to stay.
Steve?
Yeah, I do get a chance to travel around and go to a lot of different school districts and hear a lot of different things that are happening in education. Sometimes you don't necessarily realize how special something is when you're so embedded in it and you're so involved in it on a daily basis. But this is pretty phenomenal. I mean, this is cutting edge. This is the kind of thing that other people are looking for and want to learn from. So, there's a lot you can take pride in here, and I hope to keep hearing about the great things that are happening. So,
Ron?
Yeah, I thought Steve was a rock star, but obviously Brianna is. So I appreciate all the good questions of Brianna. But honestly, in the work I do, I'm in engineering and program management. 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm online with India, Brazil, and Carolina, people in the Carolinas. 7:30, people from China are calling in. I'm trying to get the guys from India off the call. And it's not just a call, it's collaborative tools online. So your personality has to come out online. You're talking to folks you have never met. You've been working with them for 2 years on a program launch. That's the whole challenge to the teachers, it's a challenge to the students. Eventually, the labs may be, you go in that room, you go in that room, and you go in that room. You got 20 minutes to solve this problem, using collaborative tools and figure that out, because that's what's happening every day. You're expected to download new software for this conference call in 5 minutes so that you can, start using those tools. And everybody's involved with certain levels of that. It's very quick, it's very fast, and our students, I think, are used to seeing that quick, fast, and they're looking for that in schools. I think the challenge is always with anything at work or in learning, it's the relationships that really make a big difference. So it's a challenge to the teachers to get their relationship established with less face time, but you have a lot of collaborative tools to work with, and then the students expressing themselves, it's easier for them than it is for us to do that. So it's that type of environment that I think we all need to get comfortable with, and this helps drive that. So that's all I have. I appreciate everybody coming tonight.
Brianna?
I'm just glad to have had the opportunity to take online classes, because it's definitely a different experience, and even outside our study topics, I've learned a lot just about using different things, different websites you can go to, things that will help me even beyond college. So it's definitely been a good experience, and I think all kids should have the choice of taking an online class.
Thank you. Jess?
I think just realizing that this is a process, loving the fact that it came from teachers and that we're here to support it and put the professional development pieces in there that need to be there, and realizing that if you're sitting here next year and we do this again, it will probably look completely different.
I would say, it's an interesting idea what Ron posed. Maybe a good way to pilot or to test it out, just a guinea pig thing, would be to have a teacher try to teach their class where the class is in the lab and they just sit in the office or in the room next door and kind of test run it a little bit and see, man, how would I communicate with these guys? Because I do hear that all the time, where, you do 2 years worth of work and you never met the person, and it's all been online and through those tools. And so that is the world that we have to get kids ready for and to solve that problem. The second part of it would be just saying, on behalf of Fraser Schools and our Board of Education, thank you for taking the time to be here today and to make the drive. I mean, Calumet, these guys, they win the All-Conference Award. It's a 9 to 10 hour drive down from the UP to come down and be a part of this conversation. And Forest Hills, I apologize, we didn't have brownies out this afternoon. We just had the bread, but we'll work on that a little bit. But no, it's been great. I appreciate the conversations in the hallway. All of it's been real positive, and I know we're all heading in the right direction. And we look forward to coming to your district to hear about your blended learning program as you guys roll it out as well.
I have to agree with Dr. Richards. It's amazing that you've brought people from all over the state here today. I think that's a real testimony to the fact that we're all committed to change. And I love the fact that we're in a school doing this, and this is kind of a grassroots way of thinking about things. And I think that's very exciting. And I think that's the way we're going to change, and that's the way we're going to be different, and we're going to stay ahead of the curve. So thank you for coming, and it was great to meet all of you.
I'm just really excited of how education is changing and what I can foresee in the next 2 to 3 years. And I wish I was going to be a student in 3 years, because I think it's going to be some really interesting things with personalized learning and even from the teacher standpoint, and how we're going to help do our PD from the personalized learning standpoint. So just really excited and really happy to be a part of it.
My final thought to you would be, don't be afraid. Recognize that as you begin to venture into the hybrid realm, there are going to be some things that you fail at, and that's okay. You've heard us say over and over today, we did all this that we've done and spent $0. I think the only money that was actually spent was giving me 1 period of release time. I think that's the only money that we've actually spent in implementing our program. So don't be afraid. And, if one thing doesn't work, And like Steve said this morning, throw it out, move on to the next tool. If that one doesn't work, just keep going until you find the tools that work for you and that fit for your students.
And I agree. It's a worthwhile endeavor, and my final thoughts would just be embrace change, expect obstacles, and just work through them. It's worth it.
Man, talk about pressure last. I guess something that resonates with me is that there's concerns about online learning and hybrid learning and forming the relationships with students, and how do you reach each child at the level they're at, and how do you differentiate instruction. And I think this sort of learning environment only improves our ability to do that, because if we know some students that are doing great and moving along, now all of a sudden when those students are meeting with the teacher, they're meeting on an individual basis or maybe groups of 3 to 5 students. We've now taken that ratio of students to teacher from 5 to 1 from 35 to 1, and hybrid learning allows that to happen. So I'm really excited to see where it goes from here and how it can really be adapted for the lower grades as well.
Thank you. If I could, everyone join me in thanking the panelists today.